fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty Hi-Yo Silver, the Lone Ranger. With his faithful Indian companion Tonto, the daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains led the fight for law and order in the early western United States. Nowhere in the pages of history can one find a greater champion of justice. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear. From out of the past come the thundering hoofbeats of the great horse Silver. The Lone Ranger rides again.
Come on, Silver. Let's go, big fellow. Hi-Yo Silver! Hi!
Joe Gilchrist owned a stagecoach line that ran west from Callaway as far as Dunville. For the past few weeks, he had been considering the extension of his line. He was about to apply for a franchise west of Dunville when one of his men came into the office, red-faced with excitement.
Hey, boss. Boss, hey, Mr. Gilchrist.
Calm down, Soda. Take it easy. What's the matter with him?
Haven't you heard the news?
What news?
You were talking about a franchise to run stages west from here and across the Taper Canyon.
Well?
Boss, you're too late.
Too late.
Molly Vinton's beat you to it.
I thought she was leaving the West.
She changed her plans, boss. She sold what property her father had left to get cash. She's got a franchise to run a line from Dunville across Taper Canyon west as far as Panamint.
She can't run stages till she puts a bridge across the canyon.
She aims to do that.
Trying to cut my throat, huh? Trying to beat me at the stagecoach business.
That's what?
Soda, you keep a close watch on Molly Vinton and let me know what's going on.
The year that had passed since the death of David Vinton had brought nothing to dispel Molly's conviction that Gilchrist had cheated her father to gain complete control of the Dunville stage line. After careful thought, she had decided to risk her small inheritance on a stage line of her own. She had secured a franchise and opened a small office. To date, she had hired but one man, Ernie Henshaw.
You'll handle the paperwork, Ernie. I'll have to spend my time getting horses, drivers, and rolling stock.
You had good training with your father, Miss Molly.
We'll soon know how good.
I hope you read the small printing on this franchise.
Oh, of course I did. It says we lose the franchise unless we run a stage from here to Panamint within 90 days.
Gilchrist hoped to extend his line to Panamint.
But my franchise is exclusive. He can't do it.
But 90 days?
I know, Ernie. It's a very short time. And Gilchrist will be watching like a buzzard, waiting to grab the franchise if I forfeit.
You could probably get into operation if it weren't for Taper Canyon.
I'm building a bridge across the canyon.
A bridge?
Yes. The men will begin work tomorrow morning. In fact, the crew is on the way to the canyon right now.
The people in South Gap have been talking about a bridge for some time. They want one, but it was too big an undertaking.
The canyon is too wide at South Gap. I'm building the bridge 15 miles to the north, where the canyon is narrow.
Oh, I see.
The engineer in charge has promised that it'd be done in time. Say, what's going on outside?
I'll see, ma'am. Looks like a delegation.
Who are all those men?
I know a couple of them. They're from South Gap.
Hi there, Henshaw.
Hello, Standish. That's John Standish.
Oh, yes, I remember Dad speaking of him. He's one of the founders of South Gap.
Mind if we come in? Came all the way from South Gap to speak to Miss Molly.
Oh, come right in, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Miss Molly, most of us knew your pa. My name is Standish. This is Lem Peabody.
Howdy.
Jake Norton.
Howdy, man.
Beside him is Hank Wilton.
How are you?
Glad to know all of you.
Well, I'll get right to the point. We heard about the stage line you plan to start up. And we of South Gap are downright glad to hear about it. A bridge and stage across the Taper Canyon to connect South Gap with the east and save many a mile going around the canyon.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry to have to tell you that South Gap will not be on the stage line.
What? Why?
My bridge will be 15 miles to the north of your town.
Man.
We heard about that, ma'am. News travels, you know. And that's why we're here.
Oh.
We want the bridge at South Gap instead of up north near the Three Rocks.
Well, there isn't even a town up where you aim to build the bridge.
Men, I'd much prefer a bridge at South Gap. I'd like to run through your town, but the canyon's too wide. It would take 6 months to build a bridge there, and I've only 90 days.
Well, we've talked it all over, Miss Molly. And we'll muster every man in town to work on the bridge. We'll do it inside of 90 days.
Oh, but you can't.
We can. We will.
I'm sorry, men. I know you'd try hard, but I just can't take the chance. I'm going ahead with the bridge at Three Rocks.
Miss Molly, we're going ahead with the bridge at South Gap. And we'll do it at our own expense. Now, if it's done inside of 90 days, will you use it for the stages?
Oh, yes, I will. And I'll go as far as I can to repay what it costs you.
Well, we'll leave that up to you. We know you'll be square with us, don't we, boys? Well, then, come on. Let's get back home and start cutting and hauling timber for the South Gap Bridge.
Two bridges were under construction simultaneously. And for the next few weeks, the sounds of hammers, axes, and saws rang out in Taper Canyon. Great timbers rose from the floor of the canyon and the stream that flowed over it. 2 high trestles were built, one to support the bridge at Three Rocks, and the other a much longer bridge at South Gap. The work was watched and followed with keen interest by many people, including the Lone Ranger and Tonto, who were camped on a hill overlooking the South Gap structure.
That's the bridge I want to see, Tonto. It will mean a great future for the town of South Gap.
You think the bridge be finished in time?
Those men are working against a heavy obstacle.
What that?
Shortage of timber.
It long haul for timber.
Yes. Most of the nearby timber was used for buildings in South Gap. Tonto, I think we'll ride north.
Look at the other bridge?
Yes. Break camp and pack our gear while I get the horses saddled.
The masked man and his Indian friend reached a hillside from which they could observe the construction at Three Rocks.
Oh, Silver. Big fella.
Easy, stop.
They found the work much nearer completion.
That bridge will be done on time, Tonto. It will make the work of all the men in South Gap fruitless.
Molly Vinton and Ernie were also observing the work. They were on the same hillside, partially concealed by a large rock and tall grass, about 100 yards away from the Lone Ranger and Tonto.
Bridge coming all right, isn't it?
Yes, Ernie. Barring accidents, it'll be finished in time.
Miss Molly.
Hmm?
Look over there to the side.
Where?
Move this way a little so as you can see past that big boulder.
All right.
There's a couple of men on that hill watching the bridge.
The man by that white horse is masked.
Now, why in the world do you suppose a masked man and an Indian would be interested in this bridge?
I don't know. But I'm going to find out.
Oh, Miss Molly, you'd best be careful.
Leave the horses here behind the rock. We'll circle around and come up behind that masked man with guns ready. I'm going to ask him some questions. And he'd better have the right answers.
For some time, the Lone Ranger and Tonto had watched the work in silence. Presently, the Indian spoke.
You say all work on bridge and South Gap wasted?
If the stagecoach route is established over this bridge, it won't be changed.
Well, maybe change it later when South Gap Bridge finished.
I doubt it, Tonto.
And that'd be plenty bad for people in South Gap.
Get him up, mister.
You're both covered.
Turn slowly and keep your hands away from your guns.
Very well. Do as they say, Tonto.
Now then, mister, give an account of yourself. Who are you?
I wear a mask to conceal my identity.
Then take it off.
Miss Vinton, would you really pull the trigger of that gun if I were to refuse?
So you know who I am.
Gilchrist is very interested in your progress. I hope you're watching him, Miss Vinton.
Watching him?
If Gilchrist hadn't swindled your father, you would have owned part of the Gilchrist line.
Miss Molly, how in tarnation does this man know so much?
I don't know.
Gilchrist doesn't want you to succeed in your present undertaking, and he'll stoop to anything to block you.
Mister, you're going to answer a lot of questions.
Oh?
I intend to find out who you are and how you know so much about my business.
Now, take off that mask like Miss Molly told you.
I can tell you just one thing, and that's in the way of advice. Keep an eye on Gilchrist. Come on, Tonto.
Now, wait a minute.
Come back here, you.
I wonder if either of you would shoot a man in the back. I doubt it. Easy, big fellow.
Now, see here, you can't ignore these guns and ride away.
One fellow, let him up.
Oh, why,
Hold it, Ernie.
But he did ride away. When a man's covered by a gun, he's supposed to do as he's told.
He had us both sized up pretty well. He called it when he said neither of us would shoot him in the back.
Now, Miss Molly,
Come on, Ernie. Let's get back to the horses. That man gave us some good advice. We'd better keep an eye on Gilchrist.
John Standish and his friends worked desperately on the floor of the canyon. They had just 2 weeks in which to finish the bridge that would secure the future of South Gap. It seemed like a hopeless task, despite the fact that many extra workers had been hired. The Lone Ranger had disguised himself and taken a job to help with the big project. He came to Standish at the edge of the stream that flowed southward through the canyon.
Standish, the men are putting the last timber in place right now.
The last timber?
The last one we have on hand. We can't go on until more material arrives.
Doggone it, that's what's making this job tough. Nearest stand of timber's a long ways south of here. It's a long haul.
Can't you get more men and horses on it?
We're using all the available men and horses.
John, I hate to say this, but I'm afraid we're licked.
Yeah, we've got 2 weeks more.
It'd be hard to finish the bridge in that time, even if it wasn't for a shortage of logs.
We've got to finish the bridge. If we don't, we can all fold up and quit.
How long before you'll have more logs?
Well, I don't know. Doggone it. Boys might bring in 5 or 6 today, maybe the same tomorrow.
We'll need him 5 times that fast if we hope to get through on time.
Even if it is finished on time, have you any assurance that the Vinton stages will use it?
We've got Miss Molly's word, and that's good enough for us.
She's building a bridge of her own up north of here.
She'd rather use ours if it's ready.
Speaking of Miss Vinton, look over yonder.
They're coming here. Great day, what does that mean? Hi there, Miss Vinton.
Hello, Mr. Standish. Hello, men.
Hello, Molly.
Oh, there.
Well, you're looking right pert, Miss Molly.
Thank you. Steady, easy. Who's the owner of that white horse over there?
White horse?
Yes, that big one.
Why, it belongs to this man.
You?
Yes, that's my horse.
Why asking, Miss Molly?
Where did this man come from?
We drifted in here a few days ago and asked for a job.
What's your name?
When Standish asked me that, I told him names were unimportant. I could use any name that you'd like.
We've met before, haven't we?
Do you think so?
Now that I hear your voice, I'm sure of it.
Well, Miss Molly, this man's one of the best workers we've got. What's the matter? Why acting this way?
Mr. Standish, the last time I saw this man, he wasn't wearing working clothes. He was well-dressed, and he wore a mask.
The curtain falls on the first act of our Lone Ranger story. Before the next exciting scenes, please permit us to pause for just a few moments. Now, to continue our story. The Lone Ranger had been working on the South Gap Bridge for several days, wearing a disguise instead of his familiar mask. When Molly Vinton rode into the canyon to see John Standish, she identified the great horse Silver.
This man wore a mask, Mr. Standish. And when a man wears a mask, he should be ready to answer questions.
But, Miss Molly, we've needed every man we could get to finish this bridge. I'm not asking questions when men come here ready to work.
The bridge isn't very far along, is it?
We're going to try to have her done. We're working night and day.
It's no use, Mr. Standish. I hate to tell you this, but the other bridge is finished. I just came here to tell you that I'm laying out my route. And the stages will cross Taper Canyon at 3 Rocks.
3 Rocks? But, Miss Molly, you promised us that if our bridge was done,
But it isn't done, Mr. Standish, and it won't be. The other bridge is ready, and that's the one I'll have to use.
Why, if the stage runs north of here, South Gap will become a ghost town.
Well, I guess that settles it then. We're licked.
No, we're not licked. Not by a jugful. Things look downright discouraging, but we're going ahead.
Gilchrist had been receiving regular reports on the progress of both bridges. When he learned that the one at 3 Rocks was finished, he called Soda into his private office and carefully closed the door.
Sit down, Soda.
I was just over at the cafe talking to Ernie.
What's he got to say?
Looks like the Vinton stagers are going to roll on schedule. Miss Molly's got the drivers, horses, and everything else lined up.
Not only that, Soda. The bridge across the canyon is finished.
Meaning what?
I'm sending you up there tonight.
Me?
That's right. You're going to plant some blasting powder at one end of that bridge.
Hey, now, wait.
Blow it loose at one end, and the whole thing will fall down into the canyon. And I'll guarantee that it won't be rebuilt inside of 2 weeks.
Tonto had been spending his time in the town of Dunville while the Lone Ranger worked on the South Gap Bridge. That night when the two met as usual in camp, the Indian brought a bit of news.
Then feller called Soda come out of Gilchrist's office. Him go where pack mule loaded, then leave town. Him come this way, then turn north to 3 Rock.
I wonder if Molly Vinton has a guard at the bridge.
Me not think so.
Tonto, we're going there right now.
To 3 Rock Bridge?
Yes. Get the horse's saddle while I change clothes.
Working rapidly, the Lone Ranger stripped off the clothing of a laborer and wiped the disguising stain from his face. He dressed in his own clothing and put his mask across his eyes. By the time he had strapped on his gun belt, the horses were saddled.
All right, come on, Tonto. See if we can find out what Soda's doing. Why he took a pack mule toward 3 Rocks Bridge. Easy, big fellow.
Easy, Scout, easy.
One Silver.
Get him up, Scout.
As the masked man and Tonto rode downhill, a full moon lighted the bridge that spanned the narrow part of Taper Canyon. They reached the east end of the bridge and reined up.
Oh, Silver.
Oh, fella.
Easy, steady,
Oh,
big
fella.
fellow.
Oh,
We'll dismount right here and look around. Easy now.
easy, Scout, easy. Everything plenty quiet.
No sign of Soda, his horse, or the pack mule.
What that?
Down there, Tonto, at the bottom of the canyon.
Let me see.
Someone riding along the edge of the river, leading a mule. Is that the man who works for Gilchrist?
It looked like same fella.
Tommy, get back this way, Tonto. Quick! Get your horse, hold him. Steady there, Silver. Steady, boy. Quiet down, fellow. Well, Tonto, that's the end of Molly's bridge.
Now no stage cross canyon here.
So that's what Soda was doing.
Him set blast to tear down bridge.
Yes, Gilchrist probably sent him here. That will be hard to prove.
If we get to Flora Canyon, maybe catch Soda.
That's no use, Tonto. We'll be far away by the time we got there.
That's right.
This will ruin Molly Vinton.
Now only chance is bridge at South Gap.
That bridge can't be finished in time, Tonto. Takes too long to cut and trim and haul the logs. John Standish had only... Tonto,
What you think?
I have an idea. We've got to get to South Gap in a hurry. Come on, Tonto. Easy, big fella.
Easy, Scout.
Come on, Tonto.
Get him up, Scout.
Followed by Tonto, the Lone Ranger raced along the eastern rim of Taper Canyon. He headed south until he reached the place directly opposite the town of South Gap. There, he guided Silver down the dangerous trail to the construction camp on the canyon's floor. Standish slept in a small tent.
Oh, Silver. Oh, easy. Standish, come out here.
Hey, what's all the ruckus about? What?
Wake up.
Hey, he's masked. What's all the excitement? John, this masked man, the Indian rolled...
Now, listen to me, man. I brought you news. The Three Rocks Bridge is down.
Down? Who are you?
You know me, Standish. I've been working for you.
Wait, that voice.
Miss Vinton told you she'd seen me with a mask. Let the explanations go to later. You've got to finish your bridge. It's Molly's only hope.
Your only hope. Just 2 weeks. Boss, we can't do it.
You've got to do it.
Well, what happened to the Three Rocks Bridge?
It was blown up.
Who done it?
Gilchrist wants the franchise for himself. Now, draw your own conclusions.
Gilchrist. Why, that ornery, scheming polecat.
He swindled Molly's father. Is he satisfied with that?
I'd like to tar and feather.
We ought to make him pay for the damage.
That won't build a bridge.
Well, if we could just get enough big
You
timbers...
can.
We can? What's that you say?
You can get all the timbers you need. The timbers that were cut to the Three Rocks Bridge. They're all on the floor of the canyon. Take men up there, select the best of the timbers, and float them downstream.
Boys, get dressed and ready to go to work. We're back in business.
In less than half an hour, the men were on their way north through the canyon. They reached the scene of the disaster and went to work by moonlight. Heavy beams and timbers were detached from the wreckage and rolled into the deepest part of the stream. The next day found work on the South Gap Bridge going forward at an amazing rate. With a plentiful supply of material, the men worked as they never worked before. Then Molly arrived at sundown and brought the United States Marshal with her.
Mr. Standish, you can tell your men to stop work right now.
Miss Molly,
You heard what she said.
Why should we stop work?
I'd never believed that you men would stoop so low. Even if you did have this bridge finished, I wouldn't use it. Why, I'd rather go broke.
Now, see here, Miss
You
Molly.
blasted the bridge. You blew it to pieces. Just so's Miss Molly'd have to use this one.
You mean to say that you accuse us of wrecking your bridge?
That's the charge.
That's not true.
Look at those timbers. Do you deny that they came from Three Rocks?
No, but
You
that...
took them from there. Floated them down here so you could use them on this job. Isn't that true?
That's true, Marshal,
We didn't
but
bust
that
the bridge. We
Everyone
had...
faced Molly and the Marshal. No one noticed the tall masked man who approached silently and stood just beyond the small group.
Now, quiet down. Quiet. Fact is this, men. Someone blew up that bridge, and you're the only ones to benefit. You've got the materials here in your possession. And I'm charging you with...
Just a minute.
That masked man.
He's the one, Miss Molly. He came here last night.
Miss Molly, none of these men had a hand in blowing up your bridge. Now listen to me.
The Lone Ranger talked persuasively for some time before he convinced Molly that the wiser course lay in letting work on the South Gap Bridge proceed. Finally, the girl agreed.
All right, go ahead, finish this bridge. Then if that masked man can't keep his word, the marshal will step in and make some arrests.
You heard her, boys. Let's get on with it, Tom. Come on.
The men worked harder than ever. Each day saw their big job nearer to completion. 3 days remained, then 2. And on the last day at noon, the final spike was driven home.
There, she's done. Now, bring on that stagecoach.
That night, the bridge stood complete and ready for the stagecoach that would make the first run from Dunville to Panamint. The construction camp beneath the bridge was gone. The canyon was quiet, silent, and apparently deserted. One man moved through the faint light that came from the stars in a moonless sky.
It'll take long to get this set.
It was Soda, once more acting on orders from Gilchrist. He scooped out a pocket in the dirt near one end of the bridge and set a keg of blasting powder in place. Then he raked a match and held it to a fuse. The fuse began to sputter.
Now to get away
There we are.
Hey, what?
You're covered, Soda.
No, hey, listen.
I'll put out that fuse.
Hey.
Boys, light the lantern.
Blowing up another bridge, huh?
You won't get me alive. Oh, my eye.
Hey,
Don't try any more gunplay. Here, Tonto, hang on to him.
Here's the lantern. Now we can see things.
Well, Soda, you're a long way from home.
Dirty polecat. So you blew up the first bridge, huh? I ought to break
No,
your...
no, wait.
Did Gilchrist send you?
I...
Did he?
You better answer that masked man, Soda.
Yes, he sent me.
He wanted Miss Molly to lose her franchise. Is that it?
Yes. My arm. Do something about my arm.
Fix his arm, Ernie. Then the marshal can take him in tow.
All right, he's your prisoner, Marshal.
With his confession, I reckon we can put Gilchrist out of business and into jail.
You can, but you might let him buy a new chance by paying for the Three Rocks Bridge.
Yes, that's right. He can be made to pay for the bridge he had so to destroy. Then I can turn the money over to you, Mr. Standish, to pay for this bridge.
Hey, boys, do you hear that? We won't be dead broke. And we'll have the stage line through South Gap. Boys, this is a day to mark on the calendar.
Wait, where's that masked man? Where's his Indian friend?
Where'd they go?
Over there. You can just see the horses.
Molly, that masked man hadn't have persuaded you to let us go on with this job.
Yes, I know, Mr. Standish. If I hadn't listened to him, there'd be no bridge. No Vinton stage line.
He sure knew Gilchrist, all right. He knew that crook would go all out to lick you.
Miss Molly, the other day he handed you something, and that was when you changed your mind and decided to trust him.
Yes. He handed me a silver bullet.
What?
I knew then that I could trust him.
What?
You see, it was just like a silver bullet that he gave my father before he died.
Oh.
Dad had told me about the owner of the silver bullet. See, he told me that the masked man was the Lone Ranger.
The Lone Ranger? Well...
This is a feature of the Lone Ranger Incorporated, created and produced by George W. Trendle and directed by Charles D. Livingston. Tonight's story was written by Fran Stryker. The part of the Lone Ranger is played by Brace Beamer.